Hey everyone, welcome to The Zest, the official podcast of Orange Coast Magazine. I'm Chelsea Ranieri, and today's guest is the founder of ViaClover, a design and manufacturing company that has created beautiful retail spaces for brands including Goop, Reformation, Chloé, FWRD, Louis Vuitton. The list goes on. Thank you so much for being here today, Gresham Taylor.
Oh my God. Well, thank you, Chelsea. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. So for our listeners, I actually interviewed you and your wife, Dina, who's also an owner of the company, back in 2021. So it's nice to get to reconnect and catch up.
Yeah, that was really cool. I'm actually, I've always had a soft spot for you because you were the first person that actually, said anything about us back in that time. So again, I'm really happy to be here.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah,
well, I was so honored to get to talk with you guys because you have such an incredible career. But you grew up in LA and you worked at your family's display company. So how did you start working there?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of music in San Francisco in my 20s, and it's really tough when you're involved with the music scene. We were definitely not going to be the next Taylor Swift. So I innately knew that, but it was fun. But I did get a chance to play with really popular bands and had a good run with really cool artists in San Francisco. So I was really open-hearted and open-minded about, what's the next thing I'm supposed to be a part of. And I dove into a few things. I came back to LA. I missed my family and just old circle of friends. I came back. I tried a few things. I worked for SBE Entertainment Group. I worked for another hospitality group called Starwood Management. I was a little bit lost. It was a really hard transition to go from that into anything else. So my uncle owned it was actually a print shop, a digital print shop. And he was like, hey, listen, while you're thinking about your next move, why don't you relax a little bit and why don't you just take a break and why don't you work for your family? We're about to go public. We have this huge, giant print shop. And for your listeners, what I mean by print is think of posters and adhesive vinyls on windows, and stuff like that. So I didn't even know I had it in me to really go all out with anything I touched. But, he invited me to come in and help sort of bring new energy and life to this print shop. He thought I knew a lot of people maybe in the creative world and I could help expand their footprint with clients. And, I just thought, after looking at his machines and all that, he had the capabilities to do much more than just these kind of graphics. They had the capabilities of doing sort of not super complex versions, but he had enough to do simple sets of windows for storefronts. So, my brain started thinking, and I was like, great. I'd love to be a part of this. I actually have an idea of how I can bring you more business. Fashion companies change every season. And he had print shops also in every city in the country. So it made sense that, well, I'm sure the larger brands, and back then, and I think this is maybe 2008, 9, 7, maybe, that was everything for a store. If you remember that, Chelsea, it was like you walk in, it was the print of the outfit and even the backlit, glossy vinyl of the story and the messaging. And it was great. So it was the first, it was my first thought. I was like, look, these guys are going to be these brands, these teams would love to have you in every city. I'm sure logistically, when they're doing rollouts, it makes sense. Why don't we start talking to their visual merchandising teams and seeing if our setup is congruent with what they're trying to achieve? And it worked out. I guessed right. So that was my first kind of, my first introduction into fashion brand experience, stores, that kind of world.
Yeah, I read that your first kind of the store designs were with Lucky Brands, Cotton On, and American Apparel, which I was obsessed with back in the day. What were you doing for? Were you doing their windows? What were you doing for them at the time?
okay, so at the time, American Apparel was just heavy into like black and white, big graphics, and like Lucky Brands um, was the same way. We were just kind of doing these simple window sets, like big image. At the time, they didn't even do like a lot of like propping. I think it was like, and they would put a shirt next to an outfit, and like next to it was maybe some kind of prop, but very light. But I was just doing these simple kind of visual merchandising sets, and like a lot of it did have to do with just visual graphics.
Mm-hmm.
But then they were reaching out to me about like, hey, because we have these cutting machines at that shop that like they can cut foam and softwoods and stuff like that. They were asking me, hey, could you create a little riser for like our sweaters? And I mean, it was so simple, but I thought it was like, Lucky Brands is like, we need 200 risers. And they were literally like square boxes. I was like, oh my God, like you guys, like we hit the gold mine. We have 200 boxes for Lucky Brands. So it started off literally with like risers. And then it was like, I don't want to get too into like the store design parts, but as I was doing that kind of work, I was doing like these simple visual merchandising sets, and maybe I would add like, I started doing some like POP signage, like it really interesting, like glass with, wood holders and like, whatever, really simple stuff. And I was in these meetings all the time with visual merchandising. And then one time I was in a meeting with Cotton On, and they were talking about how they were going to end print, not only for their sustainability initiative, but they just thought that the trend was going to be people needed to experience full sensory.
Wow, they were ahead of the curve.
Connections. They were. I think that conversation was going on a lot with a lot of the brands, but Cotton On, to give them credit, they were a really cool Australian brand. They actually had Cotton On Kids, which to me was one of the most groundbreaking kids lines. I'm not sure if they have that. Maybe they still have a store in Irvine Spectrum, but they were just like this. They were just like this cool team. But they were the first ones to tell me that, hey, look, the trend is going to be more about materials, smell, touch, feel, color schemes, and we're going to start messaging a little bit more through that medium as opposed to giving it so directly through a photo image. And, Lucky Brands was the same way. And I think at the time I met Everlane, and they were the first. Yeah, they were the first that were like, hey, we don't need box risers, Gresham, but like, we're going to start, expressing ourselves through these materials as well. So I went back to my family's company, and I was like, hey, listen, guys, like, I'm not sure that this print world is going to hold up for very much longer, at least in the retail world. And at the time, I was bringing in I was doing the print sets for Chanel, Louis Vuitton, all of them. I eventually got all the accounts, and I was doing all the graphics. I even did all the graphics for all the Westfield malls in the whole country. So, I'm like downplaying the amount of like print I was selling. Yeah. And I really think Chelsea is like the print world. And I kind of did this when I transferred over to the more fabrication world. I just thought that like my industry didn't have anybody exciting, or didn't have like a glossier or maybe a current person kind of representing that scene. It reminded me of the show The Office. I swear to God, it's like that's literally I'm making it sound cool, but those are like my coworkers, and I kid you not. But much like that show, they were such like old school salesmen, like door to door, kind of like, I don't know. They remind me of like vacuum salesman kind of guys. Yeah. So I really learned a lot from this print company, not only like the corporate structure, how companies communicate internally. I was so green to it all. So I was learning that. And at the same time, I was learning that, wow, this industry I'm in is going to be obsolete. As you know, you don't even see graphics anymore, really portraying anything about messaging. But so I went back and I said, hey, listen, I think we should go heavier investments into display. I'll get us the clients. It just wasn't the time for them. They had consolidated with other print companies. They were going a whole different direction. So I was like, well, I definitely don't want to. I was kind of excited that I was in the business world for the first time, and I was a really good salesman at the time, and I was meeting all these people. I didn't want to lose that black book. So I was like, I talked to a few of the clients and I was like, hey, listen, I'm going to start at the time a small fabrication shop to help you with this new adventure and this new way of expressing your interiors. And I spoke too soon, but I jumped. I left that company, and it was, family. They hated me for a while, but I had to do it. And then I started my own. I had a little wood shop and a little metal shop. So, and then the fun began. I just, because of those meetings is what really, I really listened to that information, which later down the line, I really like, I can hear the right choice pretty clearly. So thank God I went that direction, and you know what I'm saying? And here we are,
Yeah. So you and Dina started ViaClover, your wife, in your apartment in Irvine in 2013. So can you kind of talk about how did you meet Dina? And then also what are the roles that you both kind of took on in this company?
Okay. So when I jumped, I was like, I thought liquid gold. I thought like the money was all in. I have all the clients, which I did. I had every client. I knew everybody I needed to know, and they knew me because I did a really good job in the print world for them, in the graphics world. So when I made the jump, I was like, oh my God. And at the time, I had already met Dina. She was a big part of my transition when I made the decision. I met Dina a couple of years before I started Clover. I met her at Emerald Bay. There used to be, I had moved my company, that print company. They moved me to Orange County because they wanted to start a new division. And I was like, great. And they were like, oh my God, there's all these surf brands and skate brands. Why don't you go out there and do what you're doing for the fashion world? And I was like, great. So I had left, at the time I was in Encino, in Los Angeles, and outside of Los Angeles. And I came to Orange County, and it was like, by the way, Chelsea, I was like, what is this? Like, I had no idea. I loved it right away, though. They told me, live anywhere you pick a spot. We'll help you with that transitional move. Let us know where you want to live. And, I just took a map and I was like, well, Costa Mesa seems like the boundary point. And then Dana Point seems like, because I was in that Red Hill commercial park right where that airport is. Yeah. So we started our shop there. And so I drove down Costa Mesa, and this is no offense to anybody living in Costa Mesa. I was just like, this is not my vibe. This is a little like, I just did this in San Francisco, more like young and like single.
Yeah, right.
And fun. And so, and as I drove through Newport, I was like, oh, I need some serious cash. So let's keep going. I just ignored the Newport straight away. And then, Corona Del Mar, like, come on. So then I landed in Laguna Beach, and I think I instantly connected to it because it reminded me of Mill Valley, which when I did music, I lived in San Francisco. I moved there when I was like 19. I stayed there for like 12 years, but in that journey, I was in the city, and then I moved to Mill Valley, and then I moved to Fairfax in Mill Valley, came back to Mill Valley in San Francisco. And Laguna Beach was the first time I saw anything remotely close to that Marin region of Mill Valley, Stinson Beach. It had a little bit of like Larkspur, because it just had this same kind of connection. So I think I felt safest there. I felt like more familiar with that. And I was like, Laguna Beach reminds me, like, you don't know if you're sitting next to a busboy or a billionaire in the restaurants, And I feel like that's the same vibe in Mill Valley. You don't know who you're talking to, what's going on, but and then there's that, a little bit of a hippie DNA in the music and that whole scene. And so I got a little apartment right behind that pottery place on PCH. Is like,
yes.
Talking about right across from Rock Pile.
Okay.
And so you got to imagine, like, I'm moving from Encino. I'm living across Rock Pile. There's like Laguna Beach. People are walking around in bathing suits. I was like, what is going on? So there's a big basketball scene out there and volleyball and just heavy sports, which I was really surprised about. But Laguna Beach is heavy, heavy athletes. It's kind of almost comparable to Manhattan Beach in that sense, where on Saturdays, Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, there's a lot of athletes playing a lot of different sports. Who knew?
Yeah.
But they would open up the high school gym. They would open up the junior highs out there, and everyone's playing full court or volleyball. And every year, that group would throw a big basketball tournament in Emerald Bay. Our friend Bo, who lives in Emerald Bay, he threw it. And I think they had to stop doing it because everyone was drunk and loud, and the neighbors were like, what is going on here? But I met Dina. She was with her boyfriend at the time at Emerald
No way.
basketball tournament. And, it's one of those things that we met, and I swear, Chelsea, I wasn't thinking of anything. I wasn't like looking for anything. And we just never stopped hanging out.
Oh,
It was like every week it was effortless. There was no like, hey, do you want to hang out? We were just joined, connected by the hip.
yeah.
And so that happened pretty fast. We met. She was going to UC Irvine and majoring in, I think, biology or something nerdy, And she was from Diamond Bar, so she was sort of familiar with the area. She had lived in Newport and Costa Mesa, so it was really nice meeting her there. And then we just connected, and she, we were staying in Laguna Beach, and she was going through this whole journey with me as I was transitioning into my own company. And I just want to say, when I transitioned, I moved really fast. I did not put too much thinking. I just followed my gut, and I think within 2 weeks, I talked to them. I'm out. Let's jump. I had like 20 grand, and I put like 10 into the business, and and off and running.
Wow.
So she was part of that journey with me. And at the time, she really didn't show any interest in all. She was just finishing up school. And, but she was part of all these meetings, and like sitting there, like while she was doing work, I was like, hustling and trying to get all these projects. And then one day she was like, what are you looking at? And I was like, oh, and this is when I've already transferred over. I just started Clover. I was like, okay, they started sending me plan sets for like stores and like layouts. And to this day, I'm horrible at reading. I'm all fluff, and my whole team is like, they are like the nuts and bolts of everything to me, everything behind me. So she was like, well, let me take a look at what you're looking at. And I kid you not, Chelsea, Dina, like, she just laid down the plans and like knew how to look at elevations correctly and how to look. And she could easily tell what was like the plumbing lines and the electrical and quickly, and I'm not even going to get that into it, but her family are pretty big engineers back. She's from Jordan. So they're pretty big in Jordan and Dubai and that region. They're really good builders. And I learned for the first time that like, wow, some of this information could be potentially passed on through DNA. Like she could just read it. And, she was just into it. She would just like ask me questions like, what was that meeting about? And what's going on? And well, let me look at those plans again. And then she just told me one day, like, hey, Gresh, like, I could really help you. Like, I know what you're doing, and you're trying to like, start this kind of new kind of company, helping produce people's like visions. Like, I can help you be really technical because I could see this clearly. And it was like some zenful. I was like, whoa. So she's like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, well, you have a semester left at school. Why don't you finish? She's like, no. Let's jump in now. The clients are happening now. Let me help you now. So she had like one semester. I think she has one semester left to get like her degree. UC Irvine. So she jumped in and started helping me. And at the time, I just add one more thing. I in order to solidify the accounts from my old company, I was like, how would they like me, but how would they jump with me into a new adventure? So I brought the head of production for that old company, who was super like green. He was like, what are we doing? And I was like, I'm going to pay you a lot of money. Just be my business partner. You just handle all the production. Even though we didn't both know what we were doing when it came to building things, he was so good at processes, because the other company I worked for was really a manufacturing machine, like the way they took in orders, so I brought him as a partner, and then Dina was like our first project manager. She was like our first hire. She was like, okay, I'll help you guys. Like, you guys need my help. So
yeah,
that's how that started. That's how Dina jumped in.
So cool. And then, so you guys were working in the beginning on stores like, or clients like, Opening Ceremony, Alexander Wang, Calvin Klein, pop-ups at the Grove, and you even did Refinery 29's 29 rooms in LA, which I remember really wanting to go to. But what were you doing with these clients? What were some of the kind of more innovative things that you were doing in the beginning?
Okay. So I quickly learned that, it's really difficult for these brands to find production partners. There's a tale of two stories with that. You know, the traditional production back in the day were like event productions. It was like booth design, booth build outs. And then it was very, I was really lucky. When you mentioned these brands, Opening Ceremony was my first client, really.
Oh, cool.
So, and it was cool because their projects were on small scales, but it was my first introduction to artist-based experiential wholesale moments, right?
Yeah.
So they were basically, as you know, just the cool kids Nordstrom's, or, not to diminish them by saying Nordstrom's if they're getting offended listening. But, they were just like this wholesale account. And it was, they definitely had a crowd that they were working, and they would bring in, and all these great brands would come in, but, it was only like, a 10 by 10, like what you would see at, Dover Street Market or something, So it was these little pockets. But so my first projects, like I remember working with Max Lamb, this like really amazing like artist, he was helping, I think the Calvin Klein pop up, but I got to work with, like, the brands were introducing me because Opening Ceremony was like, oh my God, I love your setup. You can do wood. I had a little wood shop. I had a little metal shop. I had a little print. And that was like a good combination for these little sets. So, Opening Ceremony was like, I had to turn things around like in 2 weeks. So it didn't really suit an event production company. And it really didn't suit at the time. Things have gotten more nimble and more artisan based, as you know now. But before, it was like either major millwork, wood shop, metal shop who were used to like, TJ Maxx rollouts, right?
Yeah.
Or event production companies who were very catered to like commercial carpet, lighting, three walls. No one was doing like interior kind of art-like structures, in the middle of their clothes, or, so Opening Ceremony was the first introduction to that. So it was actually a real gift for me to my first experience into retail was with like the best artists. Like each brand, like Hermes, Louis Vuitton, they're always working with the best artists. I would get introduced to them, even though it was a small project. That creative director, that artist, was very in control of all these little spots. So I got to quickly learn how they talk and how organized they were, how efficient they were, and how efficient these brands were. And what a great experience on a small level to start practicing on super complex, artist-based wholesale moments. And then that kind of transferred over. Then the trend took off. And, I did a lot of those. I did for both the New York showroom and LA. So I learned logistics I learned how to do multiple cities. And then you would meet the brands because you were doing a little moment with them. Then Alexander Wang's team was like, hey, could you do the metal fixtures at one of our stores? Or, Calvin Klein was like, hey, thanks for doing that little moment. I think we did the Kendall Jenner, Justin Bieber campaign. Yeah, it was a Justin Bieber, Kendall Jenner campaign that would like take over opening ceremony, the windows and the interior. And we did it, and it was like a blue scaffolding structure. And, and I think I had no idea that those brands, because I always thought of them as very commercial. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that those brands actually had this like artist-based side, which you now see in Art Basel and Salon de Mobile, how that's kind of really elevated in a big way. But they've always made sure that they've connected to like this more artistic community. So I was basically just a part of that with opening ceremony. And then, of course, you'd meet the brands, you'd build a relationship with them. Then you would do fixtures for their stores. And, at the time, Lucky Brands was like, hey, now that you have a shop, it was my first royal mess up, but it taught me everything. They were like, hey, we have pipe fixtures. Remember those, how trendy pipe fixtures were? Like,
yes.
Plumbers. They were like plumbers racks, but can you do them for 350 stores? And I was like, yeah, of course. And I think I got every store wrong. I was like,
oh no.
I mean, so I'm making this journey sound cool, but at the same time, I didn't know what to take on, what not to take on. Yeah. I would hit a home run and then like fail miserably and then beg for forgiveness. And, those are the opening kind of like brands. It was Calvin Klein, Lucky Brands, American Apparel started using me for metal fixtures and very simple stuff. It was not until James Purse that I started getting referred to more elegant brands. He had me do, it was pretty simple, like a matte black shoe risers. And he's pretty big into teak. So I was doing a lot of like teak displays. Then I met Theory. And then I could eventually I can do about 2 or 3 to 4 stores worth of things. So that was kind of my beginning. I would, but not a full store package, just like really just visual merchandising units. Mm-hmm. So that was the intro to it all. Opening ceremony gave me like that art credit so I could use it in sales and presentation. And they figured, I guess of opening ceremony, those guys are really hardcore. If they're using you, then we trust you. And like, and then, that's how I started getting into the store design scene.
Yeah. And I want to fit everything in because there's so much great stuff, but I want to fast forward a bit. So recently you built Goop's 6th boutique in Marin County. I saw the photos of this in an article. It is stunning. The most gorgeous store I've ever seen in my life. Can you walk me through what a typical collaboration session looks like? Because I can imagine it might be hard for a client to articulate exactly what they want, but
Okay. So it's important to note that so we graduated, obviously that's now that's year 9. Or year 10. And, we've obviously brought in design and architecture and, it was a natural progression for us to become a design house who then could make your things for you.
Yes.
That's just a natural evolution. Goop really liked that model. So I didn't get to work with Gwyneth just yet, because she is the creative director. She's the one who chooses what we're going to do for the store, the visual she wants. But I was introduced to her through Matthew Blythe is the vice president of development and retail. I had met him with Outer Known.
Cool.
So he was doing all the Outer Known stores. Goop hired him. He's brilliant. He's a master of getting a concept and then rolling it out and working with teams like me to make it easy and seamless from the brand's end. So he was like, look, I love, because usually my model works with tighter budgets and tight timelines. Because we do everything in house. We're not relying on other people's schedules. And because we are really good builders, we can figure out ways to hit budgets as opposed to a designer designing it and then outsourcing and then people are bidding on it and, that model. So they were really excited that I could potentially make something very dynamic for numbers that normally people can't hit. So it was a surprise, but he was like, well, great. We're all in. We love your model. They came to the shop. They're like, you're going to meet with Gwyneth and hopefully you can knock it out of the park because she's not easy. And, I met with her on a Zoom call, and the process with her was a little different than everyone else's. I had previously worked with Kristen Cavallari, and not on her level of celebrity, but I kind of touch and feel. I did all the Uncommon James stores. So I was like used to somewhat of something like that. But she was just like, so it went pretty simple. She was like, look, there's a big trend going on with like plasters and cave worlds and modern, and I'm not into any of that. She's like, I am into pre-war, French-inspired industrial kind of spaces that feel both feminine and masculine. And then she was like, hopefully you get what I'm saying. And, I think I had 2 more meetings with her after that of like, everyone, I think on their team was nervous about like, okay, because we usually, after I have a concept consultation with a client, we generally, our contract is we'll do 3 rounds of mock-ups. So you tell me what you like, Chelsea. I present to you what I think is great for the brand. And then we have 2 more iterations of that. Usually by the 3rd, you don't need any more than 3. I mean, there's so many people going back and forth. So by the 3rd mock-up, you're usually done. But everyone was nervous about the first one because, is she going to like it? If not, whatever. So, we submitted it. She loved it. I think she had like 1 change. It was like very minimal. She was like very happy about it. And, that was the design process. And then we went to the Goop headquarters and presented the materials live. And she is the shot caller. There is no other person involved, which I thought made sense to me. Yeah. After seeing her her brand success, she really is involved all the way. So she checked off a bunch of samples. She said, let's go, let's roll. And then she, was just like, don't mess up. Yeah. And I was like, great. So on that project, we were, again, I'm not going to get too into this, but we take on the developer role too. So, obviously with all the stores and all the knowledge, like I choose the general contractor. We are the project manager. We help develop it, TI it, making sure that every step of the way is done right. Either they're using my team or we're using another team to help locally. So we did the whole store. So I designed it. Then we made the pieces at our shop. And generally, we need about 4 weeks per store for just the production. From start to finish, it takes about 3 months, meaning from the design concept to producing everything is about a 3-month process.
That's so fast.
It's fast. And then it takes about 2 weeks to install. But in the meantime, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff to the store to tee it up and prep it up. So yeah, everything was designed about 3 months, 4-month process for the entire store. And it was cool. The only thing I put on top of that was we were in Marin County, which is pretty organic. So I took my pedal off the pre-war is basically like think of Upper East Side apartments in the 1900s, those kind of moldings that you would see in those traditional big loft apartments. Yeah. She loves that. She likes to have more of a museum kind of feel to that look. And then she liked the French industrial cafe feel, meaning if it was going to be a commercial space, please make it feel like a French cafe. So, but I thought the missing element was we are surrounded by the redwood trees. and that kind of landscaping, and it's directly in front of the store. You can see it. So I just made sure that I brought in a little bit more wood than I'm sure she would have liked, and I warmed it up a bit. I just kept on thinking. We usually put a character to each store, and I just kept on thinking Fleetwood Mac if they lived in an Upper East Side apartment.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, so I was like, they're recording their album in this beautiful Upper East Side apartment. This is how I think they would decorate it. So that was sort of the behind the scenes concept of the process. Turned out great. And then I'll end with Goop. A lot of partners want to get involved with decor because they get to get blasted, and they get, they're really good about shouting out for like everybody involved. So I did have more access than usual to decor that would usually cost me a lot of money. They are really good about, hey, these are our partners and past partners. So I had a big pool of, lighting, chandeliers, sconces, little nooks and crannies around the store. So that was new for me, that I had that much at my disposal, So that was
so
it.
Nice.
Hopefully that gave you the picture.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well,
Yeah, that's cool.
Getting short on time, but I just want to say for our listeners, you've also done a ton at Lido Marina Village, Claire V, Serena and Lily, Stony Clover Lane. You've done South Coast pop-ups like Tiffany's and Coach, and just literally the list goes on for so long. It's amazing. But I do want to ask, is there anything that our listeners should keep an eye out for from you in 2025?
Yeah, we're going to be doing all the new Reformation stores and all. Yeah, so we've already done a couple, but there's new concepts coming from their team. So we're rolling out, I think, about 10 stores for them. They're all kind of different. And then we just signed contracts with Thomas Keller's group, who has French Laundry, and they kind of dominate Yountville and other restaurant areas. So we're going to be helping with some stores and some potential, maybe some restaurants, and then hospitality groups locally. I haven't locked it in, but it looks like it's all happening. So a lot more hospitality, a lot more restaurants.
Oh my God, congratulations. And quick shout out, if you guys want to see more, we're featuring ViaClover's Via Avalanche line in our March issue, which is a beautiful line of furniture. Is it just Avalanche or Via Avalanche? Yeah,
it's Avalanche is the brand, and Via Avalanche is the website. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. And the photo that we're featuring is so beautiful. So very excited for that.
Thank you so much for that, by the way.
Of course. We're coming to the end of our time, but before I let you go, I have 3 final questions for you that we call the Thoughtful 3. So first, what was the best advice that you received when you were first starting out?
Okay, so I was told, and I didn't believe it at first, that being really good at what you do, and let's call that success, takes a long, long time. I've read books like 10 years, but they were like, no, give it 20. So it's good advice, because every time I kind of don't hit the mark of what I want, or if I'm a little bit behind, I always think, well, you do have 20 years to, it takes longer than you think. And I'm learning that.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
And then what's a mantra or quote that you live by when you're going through challenges in your company, or something you tell yourself?
Yeah, I tell this, and my daughter's 2.5, and I'm trying to all I think about is getting her to know this. I'm into putting an ending to anything I begin. I don't care if it's you writing a short story, or you're starting a photography project, or whatever it is you do. For me personally, I always put an ending to it, and I trust that maybe it's not where I want it to be right now, but in time, I'll get better, and that those endings will get better and better and better. So I'm just that's my whole thing, is just end it, Greg. If I have an idea, put an end to it. Always end it. That's just
follow through. Yeah. And then lastly, have you ever struggled with self-doubt? And if so, how did you work through it?
Okay, all the time. So, I don't know anything. I feel like the older I get, the less I know, so it doesn't really help. That I I have a really good team around me,
Mm-hmm.
and I get locked into the same story a lot, and it creates a lot of insecure, kind of anxietal feelings about things I'm doing. My team is really good because I'm really good about opening up about how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling a little panicky about something, or a little anxietal, or a little stiff, I'll tell them right away. And they're really good about helping me reframe the story of it all. And I don't know, I guess sharing that with them. I'm a little bit more of an open book than other people are, but I'll tell them, they'll help me reframe that story. And I think every time I do that, I always feel about 50% better. So
Yeah, that's a nice balance with that team. And I do want to mention that you have an all-female construction team, which I think is so cool.
that's all Dina, man. That's like, she's like, she thinks that like girls are just really good at whatever she's doing.
Yeah.
She's tried a few guys out. I've seen them get fired pretty quick. And she's just like, the girls are just, they're just magical. They're just really, I think I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's just happening the way it's supposed to be happening.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts from our first story was how you said that like guys on construction crews or whatever will come up to you and ask you a question. You're like, I don't know, go ask her.
Oh my God, Chelsea. Dina will be like this, and then they'll look at me, and I'm like, dude, I don't even know how to build anything. And then they'll be forced to look at Dina. I'm like, God forbid. But yeah, I love it. They're really tough. They're really tough. They're magical.
Well, I could talk with you forever. I'm so excited to keep working with you guys in the future. So thank you so much for doing this. I had so much fun doing this.
Chelsea, thank you so much for believing us in the beginning when no one even knew who we were. So thank you so much.
Oh, of course.